Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. To ask the Deputy First Minister what engagements she has planned for the rest of the day.
Deputy First Minister.
Indeed, in fact.
Later today, I will have meetings to take forward the Government's programme for Scotland. That programme includes protecting the council tax freeze, free university education, personal care and bus travel for pensioners, and healthcare free at the point of need.
Joanne Lamont.
The late Campbell Christie was one of the finest trade unionists this country has ever produced. A man who fought uncaring Tory governments at every turn and helped to deliver this place to protect the people of Scotland. His commission on the future delivery of public services, written for this SNP government, said contentious issues such as the continuation of universal entitlements must be considered openly and transparently rather than in the current polarised terms. This is about the kind of fairness we want to reach for our communities. With spending projected not to get to even 2010 levels for another 15 years and Scotland's population ageing, I agree with Campbell Christie. And I believe that debate about how we make spending choices fair for people across Scotland must happen before the referendum. Does Nicola Sturgeon?
Deputy First Minister.
Sorry, that sort of begs the question why Joanne Lamont has set up a commission that reports after the referendum in 2014. Joanne Lamont clearly doesn't have the courage of her convictions. Now, can I agree with Joanne Lamont?
Order.
Can I agree with Joanne Lamont about the late Campbell Christie, because he did have a tremendous record in fighting uncaring Tory governments. If only there were people on the Labour benches today that fought uncaring Tory governments. Presiding Officer, this government makes its choices. We deliver balanced budgets to this Parliament, balanced budgets that focus on growth, on protecting public services and, yes, protecting the household budgets of families who are struggling to make ends meet. So we'll be proud to protect the council tax freeze. We'll be proud to protect free education for working class young people. We'll be proud to protect free personal care and bus travel for our pensioners. And if Joanne Lamont wants to make that the dividing line of Scottish politics, I only have one thing to say to her: bring it on.
What Nicola Sturgeon needs to understand, this is not a game about dividing lines. This is not about her electoral future. This is what's happening in our communities across Scotland. She ought not to believe what her spin doctor tells her about what I said. What I said was we need an open and honest debate, just like John Swinney said in 2010. And if she doesn't want to agree with Campbell Christie and me, maybe she will agree with one of her own, with her Chief Economic Advisor, Crawford Beveridge, in another report commissioned by her government. He said of free services, concessionary travel, prescription charges, eye examinations, free personal and nursing care and tuition fees are commendable, but simply may no longer be affordable. But critically, he added, a debate needs to be had on whether those who can afford to pay might be invited to do so, thus allowing better targeting of those in most need. Now, the fact of the matter is, her own minister, Alec Neil, when he got rid of the universal provision of central heating systems, said it would be inappropriate to use scarce resources to provide free central heating systems for some of our retired bankers, for example, who receive substantial benefits, substantial pensions. This is not an issue of the principle of universality. It's critically a calculation, an electoral calculation by Nicola Sturgeon. Why won't she have the debate demanded by Campbell Christie and Crawford Beveridge, and make sure we have that debate this side of the referendum?
Deputy First Minister.
Joanne Lamont should make...
Order.
Joanne Lamont should make no mistake, I relish this debate. I think Joanne Lamont's on pretty dodgy ground invoking spin doctors into this debate. You see, because within 20 minutes of her making her brave speech on Tuesday, she dispatched her spin doctors to say she didn't really mean police numbers, she didn't really mean bus travel for pensioners, she didn't really mean free personal care, except Arthur Midwinter, he's told the truth today, hasn't he? He says everything is on the table. Now, there's lots of things you can call that kind of approach from Labour. Shambolic is the word that immediately springs to my mind. But let me tell Joanne Lamont something for free. It's not brave and it's certainly not honest. This government will put forward balanced budgets. Yes, it's not easy. It's not easy to deliver balanced budgets when those budgets are being cut by the Tories. That's why we argue for the control of our own resources. Joanne Lamont's answer to that is to pass on Tory cuts to hard-pressed Scottish households.
Professor Arthur Midwinter will be advising Labour on these issues.
Joanne Lamont. Order.
The Deputy First Minister might think that sounds good in here. I'll tell you, in the country, it sounds like a lot of nonsense.
Order.
The fact of the matter is, I agree with the Deputy First Minister that the budget has been cut. But if the budget has been cut, why does she stick with the same priorities that she set out in 2007? If there are cuts, the dispute is not whether there are cuts or not, which is the way Nicola Sturgeon wants to present it, is about which cuts you make in tough times. Now let me explain what real people think. Nicola Sturgeon lives in a household. Nicola Sturgeon lives in a household with an income of more than £200,000 a year. She gets free prescriptions. Free prescriptions cost £57 million a year. How many nurses is that? Like me, she will have saved more than £400 from the council tax freeze. Yet my children's school and schools across the country are getting to the stage where they can't even do the basics like photocopying materials. If spending cuts threaten the kind of free care for the elderly that we want to deliver, is it fair that a woman like her on 200 grand gets free prescriptions? Is it fair that the Sturgeon household on 200,000 a year gets universal benefits when families on average earnings pay more for childcare than they do for their mortgage?
Deputy First Minister. Order.
Well,
Deputy First Minister.
Labour are obviously more out of touch than I thought they were. Let me remind Joanne Lamont that under the system of prescription charges that she and her party presided over, people earning as little as £16,000 a year paid prescription charges. That's why it's fair to abolish prescription charges. And on the council tax freeze, if Labour think the council tax freeze is so wrong, if they think it's doing so much damage, then why is it that just 5 months ago, in the local government elections, Labour promised to continue the council tax freeze? I have it here. Labour's Glasgow manifesto, 100 things we will do. Number 1 on the list, continue to freeze council tax for the next 5 years. Now, Joanne Lamont likes to talk about honesty, but if she was being honest, then isn't it the case that by definition she's being deeply dishonest now?
Joanne Lamont.
We know that your council tax freeze is underfunded, and what we now have to confront. I have been to too many meetings listening to care workers describing their lives now and their terms and conditions. I've listened to too many carers mopping up for the fact that budgets are being cut to stay silent on this issue. Talk about not opening the gas bill but putting it in the drawer. That is what Nicola Sturgeon is doing with the nation's bills. And let me tell her, as every decent household knows, that never ends well. These are serious times. You said you want a debate. Have one. Let the people of Scotland choose. Because if she closes the debate, if she shuts down the debate in the way that that started this week, she'd better explain to the carer told they can only care for their pensioner for 15 minutes why that is happening, to the son why that's the only care his mother gets, to the parent why their child can't have the classroom support they require to maintain their child in mainstream education. There is a public spending crisis happening now, and it's going to get worse, and she should face up to it. Yes, the Tories are cutting the budget, but within that budget, we will all be judged. We will all be judged about the choices we make, whether it's our benefits or the needs of the people of this country. She should get that, and she should change her mind now.
First Minister, order. Deputy First Minister.
Can I remind Joanne Lamont gently that the people of Scotland did choose. In May 2011, they overwhelmingly chose free prescription charges, a freeze on the council tax and free university education for working class kids. And I say this to Joanne Lamont. If she is saying that she wants to reverse all of these policies, don't set up a commission, have the guts to say so and let the people of Scotland choose after that. But, you know, don't just listen to me about this. Let's have a look at some of the reaction from Labour posters on the Labour Haim blog site. What are we doing? Did we learn nothing from the New Labour nonsense? This is not a speech based on any reasonable interpretation of Labour values. That's what Labour members have to say. But, you know, all is not lost for Joanne Lamont, because Murdo Fraser was quick to take to Twitter. What he said was, good to see Joanne Lamont warming to Tory policies. Now, we can laugh, but you know what? It is actually quite tragic. Joanne Lamont, poster girl for the Tories. Whatever happened to Labour? You know, we used to have New Labour. Now we've got Joanne Lamont, New Blair.
Question number 2. Ruth Davidson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Deputy First Minister when she'll next meet the Prime Minister.
Deputy First Minister.
I have no plans to meet with the Prime Minister in the immediate future.
Ruth Davidson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And I'd like to thank both of the honourable leaders for finally and belatedly bringing the debate onto ground that the Conservatives, have been talking about since before the last election. And I chime hugely with my colleague Murdo Fraser.
Order. Let us hear the member, please.
I chime hugely with Murdo Fraser, and I'm pleased that the Deputy Presiding Officer wished to remind the Chamber that indeed there was only one party who wasn't taking part in the Dutch auction in 2011, who had sound ideas for prescription charges and council tax and student funding. But, Presiding Officer, last week, the Finance Secretary gave us what he said would be a budget for growth. He gave it a big build-up. He was taken to the newspapers, he took to the airwaves, he said that every penny would be put towards the economy. That was a budget that fell apart within 24 hours, which has been decried by the leading economist, Professor David Bell. It's been decried by the construction industry chief, Michael Levac, and even by the Parliament's own independent information service, SPICE. So let's give the Deputy First Minister a chance to repair the damage. Can she tell me now what is the big game changer in 2013-14 that's going to give the Scottish economy the boost that John Swinney faithfully promised?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, can I say to Ruth Davidson that I do agree with her on one thing. I agree that the Tories have always talked about cuts and penalising hard-working families in Scotland. They've certainly been absolutely consistent. She says she doesn't want to have a Dutch auction. My memory was that she used to claim credit for the council tax freeze and the 1,000 more bobbies on the beat, so she should perhaps look back at previous speeches. The budget John Swinney presented to Parliament last week, I think, was a budget completely focused on getting growth in our economy. 40 million more this year and next for housing, 80 million accelerated funding in schools, money for green investment, adding to the £3 billion capital programme that we have this year. That's what we are doing to accelerate construction and to get growth and jobs in our economy. And she mentioned Michael Levac. Michael Levac actually this week welcomed the steps that the Scottish Government was taking, and he then went on to say the UK Government needs to do more. So perhaps it should be Ruth Davidson getting on the phone to the Prime Minister and asking him to do his bit.
Ruth Davidson.
Well, she clearly read her colleague's press release, but I'm not sure she read the 2013-14 budget, because the 80 million for schools didn't kick in until at least a year after, and the 40 million that went back into housing was to help repair some of the damage of the 100 million that had already been taken out of housing. The presiding officer, the Finance Secretary has had a busy few days, because at the point at which his budget was being picked apart, he was speaking to Scotland accountants. And what he told them was that he was going to correct his own leader's words in January by saying that, actually, a separate Scotland would take on a share of the multi-trillion-pound banking debt. This follows Ms Sturgeon's gaffe and subsequent U-turn on a place on the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee. It follows the SNP's collective economic illiteracy on a separate financial regulator for Scotland. So this week has proved that not only can this government not write a budget for today, but they have no idea how to construct a financial system for the future. They are back of a fag packet government that pushes every hard question to this mythical white paper we're all supposed to expect late in 2013. So if the SNP is asking the people of Scotland to trust them with everything that they have, but they won't tell them how they would keep that money safe, and they won't tell them anything at all, can this Deputy First Minister, can she stand up here, now that you're taking on the bank debt, and tell us in pounds and pence, how much of it are you willing to take on? How much? How much?
Deputy First Minister.
I would ask Ruth Davidson to listen carefully to my answer here, because not for the first time Ruth Davidson has just got it spectacularly wrong. Not only has the SNP, me, John Swinney, the First Minister, always been perfectly clear that an independent Scotland would take its fair share of any debt associated with the bank bailout. Not only that, this is the bit Ruth Davidson should listen to.
Ms.
Because you see, the net borrowing for the bank bailout, the population share for Scotland of the net borrowing for the bank bailout is already included in the GERS figures. It's already there. And these very same GERS figures show that Scotland has a relative surplus. In other words, an independent Scotland would be richer than we are now. Another good reason to vote yes.
Constituency question, Malcolm Chisholm.
Prejudging council investigations concerning the death of my constituent John Gibson and the home care services he received, is the Deputy First Minister concerned that 6 complaints about the private home care provider in question have been upheld by the Care Inspectorate since February alone, and that employees of that and other home care companies seem to be overburdened with too many clients and too short a time with each? Will the Scottish Government undertake an urgent review of the way home care services are commissioned and delivered, particularly in view of the increasing and welcome emphasis on home care within health and social care policy?
Deputy First Minister.
Can I thank Malcolm Chisholm for that question, because it is an extremely serious matter. The death of Mr Gibson, let me, I'm sure on behalf of everybody in the Chamber, pass on our sincere condolences to the family and friends of this individual. But that has prompted Care Inspectorate, City of Edinburgh Council and Lothian Borders Police to launch an investigation, and I think it's important none of us preempt the outcome of those investigations. What I would say, though, and I hope Malcolm Chisholm would accept the sincerity of this, I think it is absolutely essential that we have in place in this country a robust system of inspection. When I was Health Secretary, took steps to strengthen the system of inspection that we have in this country, and Malcolm Chisholm made some suggestions that were taken forward by this government. So my position is very clear. Let us await the outcome of the investigation. If there is action to be taken to make the system that we have more robust, then I can give Malcolm Chisholm an absolute assurance that this government will not hesitate to take those steps.
Christine Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask the Deputy First Minister, given the recent storms which battered Scotland and in particular caused flooding in Peebles and power cuts in Gore Bridge, both in my constituency, what processes are in place to provide the necessary links from the Government's resilience team to local authorities, such as those of Scottish Borders Council and Midlothian Council?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I'm confident that the right links are in place. I'm confident that they worked well on this occasion. I think we did cope well with what the BBC described as the worst September storm for 30 years. We prepared well. Keith Brown worked very closely with local authorities that were likely to be affected, including Scottish Borders and Midlothian, ahead of the storms. Partners continued to work well together throughout the course of the storm, ensuring at all times a coordinated response. And, Presiding Officer, I want to take the opportunity to commend both Lothian and Borders Police and Scottish Borders Council for their prompt response to flood warnings, which helped to protect both property and the public. I also know that the Minister for Environment and Climate Change spoke to Borders and East Lothian Council earlier today.
Question number 3, Willie Rennie.
To ask the Deputy First Minister what issues will be discussed at the next meeting of the Cabinet.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, can I firstly take the opportunity to wish Mr Rennie a very happy birthday? I'm sure my dad will be delighted to hear that he shares a birthday with the leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Mr Rennie. Can we let the birthday boy speak, please?
Thanks to the Deputy First Minister for her best wishes. It's good news. It's good news that the Scottish Government will be increasing nursery education for 3- and 4-year-olds. But Save the Children tell us that before the age of 3, children from disadvantaged backgrounds have already fallen behind. If we're going to give them a chance, we need to increase provision for those 2-year-olds. Does the Deputy First Minister think her plans to give nursery education to only 1% of 2-year-olds will be good enough to bridge the gap in educational attainment between the rich and the poor?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I agree with Willie Rennie that making sure we are providing well for children in the earliest years is of paramount importance. I think this government's record is extremely good in this regard. We've already expanded free nursery education by 15%, which benefits around 100,000 children every year. We've extended the free school meals entitlement to more children and more young people from low-income families than ever before. And, of course, we have pledged to increase from 475 hours per year of preschool entitlement for all 3- and 4-year-olds to a minimum of 600 years of early learning and childcare for all 3- and 4-year-olds and for looked-after 2-year-olds. So, yes, I do believe that is a sound package of support, but I also accept that particularly for the most vulnerable children and the youngest of most vulnerable children, we've always got to be working to do more to increase the support and make sure we're giving our youngest children the best possible start in life.
Willie Rennie.
Doris and Sandra White knew all that, knew what the Deputy First Minister was setting out, but they've asked, they've demanded, in fact in a motion and in a speech in here, that more needs to be done. In England, they're going to give nursery education to 40%. 4 out of 10 2-year-olds will be getting nursery education. In Scotland, it is only 1%. A generation will miss out. The evidence is that many will never, ever catch up. It's a gap in provision that will lock in a gap in attainment. So can I appeal to her once more? Can she review the government's plans so that disadvantaged kids just don't lose out?
Deputy First Minister.
Can I say, in all seriousness, to Willie Rennie, that the package of early years care that this government is pledged to deliver is greater than what is being delivered south of the border. The government in England is not providing 600 hours per year of childcare. But I do agree, and I hope this could be something we can build some cross-party consensus on, because I do agree we must do more for our most vulnerable young children. That's why, for example, the government, as part of our approach to more preventative spending, has set up the Early Years Change Fund. So our policies and our approaches on these things will always be kept under review to make sure that we are taking all of the reasonable steps that we can to give our children the best start in life.
Question number 4, Sandra White.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Deputy First Minister what progress is being made with reducing waiting times for treatment for drug misuse.
Deputy First Minister.
The latest statistics that were published on Tuesday show that our target to reach a level of 90% of clients starting treatment for their drug problem within 3 weeks of referral has been achieved. That's 9 months ahead of schedule. In 2007, 27% of people who needed drug treatment had to wait over a year just to get an appointment, not even treatment, and a wait exceeding 6 months was not uncommon. We're now seeing the successful impact of our commitment to increased investment in frontline drug services. This commitment remains unstinting, with £30.2 million allocated to health boards for frontline drug services and support in 2012-13, representing an increase of over 20% since 2006-07.
Sandra White.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for a reply. I think it is indeed great news, and everyone should be very, very grateful for what is actually happening. And I do congratulate everyone, from families to professionals, who have worked so hard to achieve these targets. Can I therefore ask Deputy First Minister what the next stage is for the future delivery of this strategy, which really is so vital for people tackling drug addiction?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, given the progress we've made on delivering the HEAT target for drug waiting times, the next phase of delivery of the road to recovery will focus on sustaining the excellent progress that's been made and making sure that we embed quality across all services in Scotland. We've prioritised work to deliver new national standards for drug and alcohol services, and these will be focused on recovery and on workforce development to drive up and support quality of service provision with a clear expectation of recovery.
Question number 5, Neil Findlay.
To ask the Deputy First Minister what support the Scottish Government provides to colleges that merge.
Deputy First Minister.
We are supporting college leaders to take advantage of the opportunities for learners and employers that college regionalisation provides. To that end, we were pleased to announce in our draft budget a £17 million increase in funding for colleges for 2013-14. This adds to our plans for new college estates, valued at some £300 million, for which the procurement process has now begun. And of course, our £15 million College Transformation Fund provides significant support for colleges wishing to merge. Finally, through our College Change team, officials are working closely with individual regions to offer help on all issues associated with merger.
Neil Findlay.
Meanwhile, back in the real world, at this week's meeting of the Education and Culture... At this week's meeting of the Education and Cultural Committee, the Further Education Trade Unions and the leader of NUS Scotland, Robin Parker, said that economic recovery is being threatened by cuts to college budgets. Are they all wrong?
Deputy First Minister. Order.
I think Neil Findlay should listen carefully and look carefully at what we are doing. We're protecting college places. I think that's what matters most to young people around Scotland. Protecting college places. We're also doing what we can to ensure that through both revenue funding, capital funding and our NPD programme, we're delivering substantial investment in Scotland's colleges. I think that's what people want from a government operating in tough times, delivering on the priorities that they set, and that's exactly what this government is doing and exactly what we will continue to do.
Question number 6, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government how it will ensure that patients in Scotland with heart conditions receive treatment that is comparable with that for those in the rest of the UK.
Deputy First Minister.
NHS Scotland is providing high-quality care, services and support for people with heart disease. Only today in the Herald newspaper, the lead clinician, Dr Barry Valance, describes cardiology services in Scotland as, quotes, second to none. Audit Scotland reported just this February that there has been significant progress in tackling heart disease and developing services. Death rates have dropped by 40% in 10 years. More patients are getting better treatment and waiting times for treatment have fallen. We published our Heart Disease Action Plan in 2009 and we've allocated over £2 million to support its implementation.
Murdo Fraser.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for her response. Notwithstanding what she has to say, she will be aware of the criticisms made earlier this week by Professor Oldroyd of the Golden Jubilee Hospital that Scotland is lagging behind the rest of the UK in introducing new drugs and techniques. One technique of vital benefit to heart attack victims, as she will know, is cardiac rehabilitation, an inexpensive treatment with a proven track record in prolonging life. Will the Deputy First Minister today commit to protecting and indeed increasing funding for cardiac rehabilitation for Scottish patients?
Deputy First Minister.
I absolutely agree with Murdo Fraser. Cardiac rehabilitation is incredibly important. I've had the opportunity over the past number of years to visit many cardiac rehabilitation groups across the country, which is why I'm so delighted to tell the Chamber that ISD reported that access to cardiac rehabilitation for heart attack patients has increased from 52% in 2008 to 71% in 2010. That's a good record that I am sure my successor as Health Secretary, Alec Neil, will be determined to continue to deliver on.
That ends First Minister's questions.